interviewed each one of you separately for finding your niche, but now it's a different type of interview. It's for Who Cares. And what I want to be talking to you about is how do lawyers work in a family setting, because both of you are related, you're cousins. And I'm hoping that you can maybe tell us how you're working as cousins and the dynamic of your practice as cousins. So maybe let's start then by you explaining how is it that each one of you got into criminal law and how you ended up working together.
I think the oldest cousin should go first.
Go ahead.
So I've already told you sort of my reasons to go into criminal law. I think I've told this story before, but I literally fell in love with my first year criminal law professor. I didn't think I wanted to do criminal law. I just always knew I wanted to be an advocate. I knew that for sure. But I literally fell in love with Professor Alan Young at Osgoode Hall and off to the races. I became his research assistant and fell in love with being a litigator. Being on my feet and being able to act as a voice for other people was really important to me. And I felt like that the field of criminal law was the one place you could do it, where you could be a voice for someone and that people will listen, that you demand a room and people listen. So I felt like criminal law was where my forte was at. So that's why I went into criminal law, and I've never done anything else. I think I tried my hat at corporate law for a summer, and I knew, I think within 3 hours, that it was not the right fit pretty quickly. So this is where I belong, I think. And I think I only belong on the defense side. I don't think I could prosecute. I certainly wouldn't make a very good prosecutor. So yeah, I think this is where I will remain.
Well, and you're doing a great job as a defense lawyer, so I don't think you have any reason to doubt that.
Thank you.
Jordana, what about you?
I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer when I was a little kid. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and one of my family members was charged, and I saw the lawyer through the process, and wanted to be that without knowing anything about advocacy, without knowing anything about litigation, without knowing anything about the law and rights and what it was all about. I just wanted to be that important to someone else's family. I wanted that status without really appreciating what it meant. And then, veered off during my teens and early 20s and thought, I would never be a lawyer, got into law school and wasn't going to do criminal law. My mother begged me to please get away from those people that I had, been spending the last 15 years of my life with. And so I didn't. I started my career in civil litigation because I thought that, an ex-criminal shouldn't be a criminal lawyer. And I was just going to be a lawyer and focus on living life a different way. And I don't regret it. I really think I needed that separation in order to appreciate a different level of professionalism, a different way to look at files initially, which I did in civil litigation for my articling as well, and then 2 years of practice. And then Leora and I went out for dinner one night and she said, "Tell me about the cases you're working on." And so I started telling her about some, I don't know, real estate deal gone wrong or some employment file. I don't know, whatever the hell was on my docket at that day. And she stopped me like halfway through describing what I was doing. And she's like, "I'm so fucking bored listening to what you do. How do you do what you do?" And I was like, I don't know. It's just what I do. It's like, no, this is not what you do. This is not what you should be doing. This is like such a waste of who you are and what you're capable of. And that dinner was the catalyst to me leaving the civil bar, which I think 4 or 5 months later, I left and started doing criminal defense work. That was back in May of 2010. And
wow.
So 13 years later. Yeah. It's been that long. You're old. Yeah. Yeah, you're
all
that
right.
old.
I'm good with that. I remember that dinner. I do. I remember it so clearly. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what the fuck is she doing? Like, this is so boring. And I just knew she had so much to give, and this just was not her calling. It just wasn't. It didn't even speak to who she was as a person. I'll never forget when she finally did make the transition to criminal law, and like just, the joy that she had, and, how bright her life was when she started practicing in criminal defense. Like it was just so obvious. And it still is. So yeah, I'm so glad she made the switch.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, I can't picture Jordana being anything other than a criminal defense lawyer. So, I mean, I'm just like surprised every time I
Don't
hear her.
try. So don't try. It was really a bad look.
So, I guess Jordana, you as well. I don't think you see yourself doing crown work or
Oh God,
prosecution
no.
or yeah.
I've been offered. I've had crowns that I've worked with on, large cases that have told me about opportunities at the Crown's office, and my typical response is I hear that ISIS is also hiring, and I'm probably more likely to join them than your office. No, I will never, ever, ever join the Crown. I would retire.
Me too.
I would never.
Me too.
I couldn't
All
do
right.
it.
But so Leora convinced you that you should become a criminal defense lawyer instead of doing civil.
Yes.
But at first, I think you didn't work together immediately, right? Like
No.
you each were
No.
working separately, and then you ended up getting together. So how did that happen? Or why didn't it happen right away? Like Leora, why didn't you hire her? Like why didn't you just?
Oh, I would.
She
I
was
would have
at a
in a
firm.
heartbeat. I was at a
Okay.
firm. I was with Newberger Rose, and then I left right after my second baby. I mean, Jord remembers them as babies, but they're big girls now. But right after my second baby, I left, and I told you I was in that little cubicle with the boys, and I think I had just left, Jord, yeah, because Ava was born 2008, so. I was just on my own in this small interior office with a bunch of guys in chambers and getting my own sea legs. And then, we went for dinner and I said, "What are you doing?" And I think there was some discussion about maybe like joining Pinkovskis at the time, which were breaking up. And I remember speaking.
No. Yeah, you told me to call Reed. So I called
Right.
Reed Rasonic, gave my resume to work at Pinkovsky's. He offered me an interview. My
Yeah.
interview was on a Monday night. He sent me an email on Sunday saying, "Can we postpone till Thursday? Something's happened." I said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll be there Thursday. Tell me what time." So I show up on Thursday. And he's like, "Really sorry. Over the weekend, Ted Royal, who held, certificates for a ridiculous number of clients, had just given them notice that he was breaking off on his own." And Reed told me after Ted leaves, they don't even know if they have a firm left. Like Ted's departure from Pinkovsky's was the start of Pinkovsky's breaking up. And so he said he didn't know if there was going to be a place for me, but that Ted was looking for help if I was prepared to interview with him. And so Reed and Ted just swapped out. Like I stayed in this interview room and Ted came in and we spoke for like 20 minutes. He hired me. And I remember I left the interview and I called Leora. I'm like, "So you know this guy named Ted Royal?" And she's
Because
like,
all
I do.
my
I'm like,
contact was Reed. Yeah.
so I'm like, "That's who hired me." And she's like, I don't understand what you're saying right now.
Because I had spoken to Reed and I said, Reed and I had done many cases together. I was close to him and I said, Reed, like, you have to take her. Like she has to be there. I really wanted and hoped that Jord would be with people who were high volume criminal defense work where I knew she would get, into it right away. And she just needed to wet her palate. And that was a great place for her to do that. But then all of a sudden they were breaking up. Reed's like, "Leora, I would hire her, but I don't even know what firm we're going to have." But Ted's got like a ton of work. So I was like, I don't care as long as she's starting in criminal law. I knew down the road we would be together one day. We needed time. I needed growth. She needed growth. And I think it worked out perfectly. I think it worked out exactly the way it should have.
And so that time eventually did happen. And so now you are working together. So how long did it take? How many years after Jordana became
Five. So I was with Royal Associates for 5 years. I think about the 3-way mark, Lee was like, "Okay, come on your own. I got space for you now." At that point, I think it took about 3 years after I joined the criminal bar for Leora to have her own chambers. And so at one point, like I think initially she was like, "Come," I'm like, "I'm not ready." I wanted to be at a certain level of experience. I wanted to know that I had enough clientele that, like I got bills to pay, right? Like I
Yeah.
couldn't just hang up a sign and think everything was going to be okay. I had mortgage, car payments. Like I don't come from like trust fund, so I needed to make sure that I had sort of myself at least properly set up, that I could afford to be on my own. And so it took about 5 years for me to be at a place where I was like, okay, I'm good now. And
Yeah.
so that's when I walked into her office and was like, let's make a checklist of everything I need to do,
Remember that.
to start on my own. And it was like, okay, get a trust account, get a general account. Like literally, she walked me through the process. We created a checklist. I banged everything off in a couple of months and set up some shop in an office in her chambers, but always separate. Like there's so much litigation amongst our families that we know money and blood don't mix. We just know it. We've seen it. We've watched it, tear apart our family as well as obviously others. So we're not one firm.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have asked us how come, and really we just do our own thing, but together, but still Leora has her own
Yeah,
associates.
it's not a
The business
partnership.
itself,
Yeah.
correct,
No.
is separate.
We're
But we
both
work together.
alphas. Like I think we're both alphas, and I think that's sometimes really hard. Different alphas, but alphas, and I think that's hard to put two alphas in the same room together and sharing a pocketbook together. So I just think it's easier this way, right? She's got her own wonderful practice, and I have my own, and we see each other every day. And yes, we do co-accused matters together, and we rely on each other. And if one needs help, or one's going on holiday, or one needs some emergency assistance on a file, then we know each other are there. So although not under the same umbrella, corporate umbrella, we're still family. So, if I need something, I know who to call.
And how is the day-to-day dynamic at the firm? Is there tension? Because you mentioned, Leora, like you're both alphas.
Yeah.
So are there fights or disagreements, arguments? And
Not really. Like I wouldn't say. I mean, there are days where I want to kill her, but like I can't say like it's like because we're fighting over something. There's some days that she just fucking irritates me, and I'm sure there's days that I irritate her, right? But we keep it to ourselves, and hopefully tomorrow will be a better day. But no, I mean I can't say there's fighting. Do we disagree on things? Yes, I can remember one case that we were doing. It was a pretty horrific murder, and something arose during the course of it, and she felt it should go one way. I felt another. I felt like the Crown was doing something that was a little sneaky, and I think that Jord may have not seen it that way initially, but in the end there was a meeting of the minds. But I think right when it happened spontaneously, she looked at it one way, I looked at it another, and we butt heads for what, minutes, Jord? I think minutes, and then it was done. So I think that's why everything works really well. I think there are some family members where there's like hot debates all the time, and ultimately there isn't here. The end goal is always the same for us, right? We both want to make sure that we're doing good work and we're taking care of people responsibly. And while we may do it differently, we still want to do it well. And if that means, swallowing my pride and saying, Jord, what would you do? Or she coming to me, Lee, what would you do? Then that's what we're going to do. Right. We'll do what's best for our clients and hopefully ensure that we're doing honorable work. But I don't really see a lot of butting of heads. Like we don't really disagree all that much. When we do, I can remember it because it doesn't happen all that often. Am I right about that? Unless she has other things that irritate the hell out of her about me that she doesn't say. But
we don't have that. We really don't. Like the way the office is run, we're always on the same page with how we want things to go. We're either talking about a specific file where we want the other's opinion. So there's nothing to butt heads about, right? Like if I take a case in to talk to Leora about, it's because I genuinely want her take because it will be different than mine. We have very similar practices, but very different experiences. And so we bring that to the table. So I'm not looking for a particular answer. I'm looking for your opinion. I'm looking for your insight. And I feel the same, right? So if I'm giving her an opinion that differs from what hers was initially, it's more to just give like a different way to look at it. We're not fighting over how to do the same task. So there's nothing, neither one of us is going to win or lose that fight, right? Like we're not investing in each other's case. It's really just for the sake of giving that opinion. And then when we do work on cases together, we just bring that experience into the same common goal. So we really don't fight.
But so what is it that each one of you is bringing? Because you do have different personalities, you have different experiences. So what is it that each one of you brings that's different to the practice or to the way you work on a case?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think anything sort of gun related, I'll usually run by Jord first, always. More so because she's got a wealth of experience and education when it comes to guns and firearms more generally. So I'll always come to her first. Even if I think I know the answer, I still kind of want to run it by her and make sure that I'm right about it. But Jord has a particular perspective when it comes to people. I think she reads people really, really well. And that's part of her life experience, and the life that she's lived. Not that I don't think I have, an ability to read people, but I think she has sort of an innate ability to kind of see through people. And figure them out pretty quickly. So I'll often run by things with her, on a sex assault or something, does this make sense? Or would someone react this way? Do you think, what do you think about how this person reacted? So I'll get her take on that. Oftentimes I'll get her to assist me with getting an accused prepared to testify, on a complex case. Going through a vigorous cross-examination and making sure that Jordana preps them. We come from different backgrounds, as I explained before, I grew up pretty privileged and had everything that I could possibly imagine growing up and grateful, but lived a very different life than Jordana lived. So I think mine is more experience in the courts. Knowing how judges will react, and in particular, more senior judges, more senior Crown attorneys, just because I've been around a little bit longer than George. I'll admit I am the older cousin, but I think I just have
There, she said it. It's on record.
Yeah. And just more experienced in the field by years is what I mean by that. Does it mean very much, if anything, now? How far she is in her practice now? No, but in the beginning, I think it did. Where she would come to me and say, "Hey, do you know this judge?" Or, "Hey, do you know?" And at least I could offer my insight. But I think we both have our strengths, charter challenges versus cross-examination on certain witnesses. Like, we have our strengths and we know what those are. And when it comes together, I think we're a pretty dynamic duo.
Nice. And Jordana, what do you see Leora as, or what kind of different perspective do you get from her that you feel you need? I mean, she mentioned a bit about the fact that she's been here for a longer time, so she knows more people, she knows how they think. But what else do you think Leora adds to the practice that's a bit different from what you're adding to the work?
I mean, I think every year that we're in this profession, we learn more, we gain more experience, we refine our skills. Like, there's no question that experience that Leora has on me, which I think is like about 9 or 10 years, because I was delayed in getting to law school. So we're only 4 years apart, but Leora finished law school when she was supposed to, I think even earlier, right? I think we fast tracked through high school. And so she started her career much younger than I did. And so those extra years translate to far more experience. So, there might be something I want to do, which technically I don't know how to, or I'm not sure how to deal with a certain situation. Like, I think last year, I wanted to get seized funds from a client. I knew that you could, didn't know how, so a lot of procedural things that I haven't done, or I'm coming across, I can say, have you done this? This is the situation. What do you think? Have you come up against this before? And so it's that additional experience that I often, turn to for help. And then again, I can look at something one way, and it's probably not how the jury is going to see my situation, because the reality is most jurors, I would think, have a closer type of background and history to Leora than to me, right? Like, most people grow up in sort of like a normal, happy, healthy family environment and don't, end up on the streets at 60. That's a good word, functional. And that's not where I'm coming from, right? And so my life experience will help me in some ways, but other ways it can hinder me because I see the world in a different way. And so sometimes the way that I want to present a case is the way that I would want to see it if I was on the jury. But the reality is, like, my life experience is not the norm. And so for me, it's helpful to sit down with Leora and say, listen, this is my thoughts on the case. If I come at it this way, if you were on my jury, what would you think? And that for me is helpful to just get what I see as sort of the majority view, what it would be like. And sometimes I've got to tweak my approach because my approach would be helpful for me, but not for 12 general members of society.
Like sometimes she thinks everybody understands the world the way that she understands it. Well, it's a given. Like, this is how people behave, and I was like, that's not a given to me. So, I think she takes for granted that everybody kind of necessarily understands it or sees the world that way. And the truth of the matter is, no, there's lots of people that don't see the world that way and haven't been subjected to any type of sort of a worldview that Jordana has. So yeah, sometimes I think she has to really dumb it down for us so that we all get it. And we do, and she makes her point. But I think that she's quite right. I think sometimes she really does have to sort of step back and say, hey, how would Leora look at it, or how would certain people look at it that didn't share the same life experiences as me?
And are you two always and constantly chatting about your cases? Did you consult each other for each and every case that you have?
I don't know each and every, but a lot. The big ones for sure. Daily, yes, daily we know what each other's doing and where we are, and what cases we're working on. I do a lot of work in like Hamilton, St. Catharines, and I have a home out there. So, I'll live out there for a couple weeks at a time for a case, and call me every morning, what's happening, what's going on. Like, even when I'm not in the office, we're still in touch. We know what's happening. Leora takes some of her cases to like next level personal, like next level. She like
what, for example?
When there's really high stakes for someone, for example, like she doesn't leave the work at the office or in the courthouse. It stays with her. And so, sometimes I feel like I'm living the case with her, even though it's not my case, to the point where I'm like,
not just Jordana, everybody in the office.
And do you go each, do you watch each other's cases at trial when you have time? I'm guessing, like Leora,
we don't have time. We don't have time. Both of our schedules are so insane.
She lives cases with me that are pretty high profile. I mean, there was a case that we lived in the office for almost 3 years that Jordana was a pretty big part of, and was there at the end, when the guy's charges of murder were finally withdrawn. But all the various steps for those 3 years, like I share them with her. I share, the tears that I shed over that client and the anxiety that I had over it and taking it home with me. And as I explained to you the last time we spoke, I take these things very, very seriously and personally, and I bring them home, probably to my detriment. But that's just the way I am. Unfortunately, I can't change. I've certainly tried, but it just is who I am. It's not every case, but it's certain cases, and I think
the serious ones.
Yeah. And when those cases are done, everyone is very, very happy. So when that case was done, Jordana and the rest of the office are extremely thrilled that it is done.
So. I think we all cracked a bottle of champagne, and we're just it's amazing. Like, we felt like it was a win for all of us, because we really
And he comes back every year, like for anniversaries and gifts, and includes Jordan in it, because she was really there with me, and I think she was there more for support for me than she was for the client, because I just every day was just so difficult for me. It really, really was. It was one of those cases where you just pray to God that the judicial system gets it right. And we don't often have those cases, but there are the ones that you do, and I know Jord has them too, and you hold your breath and pray that the system gets it right, and more often than not they do. So
and I wanted to ask, I'm coming to the end here of the interview, and want to thank both of you for for your time. I know you're both very busy, but I wanted to ask you, like, do you think that the fact that you're the way you're working right now is very good? You have chemistry, even though you're like your family, and it's working really well. But do you think, is it because you're family that it's working really well between you and her, or is it I mean, because you're very different. So is it really the blood bond that's keeping it together, or?
It's a good question, actually. I don't know. I mean, listen, Jordana and I, we didn't grow up together.
But you're
Initially,
still family.
and initially we did. We're
Yeah.
first cousins, so
Yeah.
Jordana's father and my mother are brother and sister. But there was obviously a break in the family, and we missed out on a lot of years together. And more often than not, I find like we're making up for lost time. So I think it works for various reasons, but yeah, I mean the love that I have for her is very different than anyone else, right? So
Yeah.
I think if she wasn't who she was, would I still love her the same? Probably not. I love her because A, she is blood related to me, but I love her for who she is, and she's my cousin. So I'm grateful for it. So I think it works because of both reasons. One, because we're family, but two, because we just work really, really well together. I think we complement one another.
Yeah.
But the love that we have for each other is probably the basis or of our relationship. So that's how I see it. Hopefully she says the same. If she doesn't, I'm gonna come over there and fucking kill her.
You're gonna have a murder on screen in a minute. No, it is the same. And I think that because of the history and the connection is why we know each other as well as we do, right? Like Leora knows me better than anyone else in this world, right? Like everyone in my life knows, like next of kin, POA, executor of my estate, like my emergency contact, like she's my person. Everyone knows. Like when I'm going into a bad day in court, my staff knows. I get arrested, they call Leora. Like she'll if I need a surety, she'll be my surety. Like Lee's my person. So that's a result. It's fun, right? Like we were really close when I was really, really young and my parents split. My dad used to pick me up and drop me off at her mom's house because he didn't know what to do with me. So for 4 years, I spent a lot of time with Leora and her family. And then my dad stopped picking me up. So I disappeared and we were estranged for 20 years. So for 20 years, we didn't have any contact. And then Leora tried initiating, did not go well.
No. Tell her the best part of the whole story. The
What?
best part of the whole story was Jordana was working in a retail store. Retail store.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, Marciano.
You gotta picture her like working in a retail store selling clothes to people. Like I can't even fucking picture that. But anyway,
Yeah.
it happened. It happened. And she's there, and you gotta picture this. Like I haven't seen her in years. Okay, like since she was like
20 years.
Like 20 years. I'm about to walk down the aisle. I'm about to get married. I'm out at Baby Village one day. Fiance's waiting outside, now husband. And I go into this retail store and she comes up to me. She's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "You're my cousin." And she said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, you're my cousin, Jordana."
No way.
Yeah. So I found her at a retail store, and that was it. I wasn't going to give up on ensuring that we were connected. She tried. She tried to ignore me for a little while, but I was a pest, and finally she relented. And so now we're stuck together like glue. But and I won't let her go again. But no, I found her at a retail store selling clothes. So
Wow.
yeah. That's just that's crazy.
It is
That's
crazy.
Crazy in and of itself.
It is. And then we spent years reconnecting, while I was in civil, while I was making the transition. And we were catching up on a lot of time. Like I had lived a lot of lives already, and we reconnected. And then like life happened in the family context, right? For both of us. Like there was a lot happening that we were consult on. Like, oh shit, what do we do? So and so just died. Are we going to the funeral? Not going to the funeral? What do we do here? And so, we just developed this like connection in this relationship because of the familial bond. But as it turns out, we also really get along. And so, there's like this underlying friendship that's developed. And then as our careers have progressed the way they have and our practices have progressed, it's also just like another layer to the relationship that we, you know, also act as colleagues, right? But the underlying fabric that holds us together for sure is the familial bond.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that we also like really get along. So we have a blast when we go on vacations together, you know, we'll do conferences together, dinners out, like we laugh a lot, like a lot. Which is also a fabulous dynamic to have in the office, because what we're dealing with is so heavy. You know, both of our practices are, you know, high risk criminal litigation. We're dealing with really heavy subject matter. Guys that are facing, you know, double-digit sentences like nothing now. It's a life. And so that laughter helps bring that balance to the office, to our practice, and I think is really instrumental in allowing us, you know, to function as we do on a day-to-day basis.
No, I agree. And like, listen, George's also, you know, really involved with my family, you know, my two girls. I have one daughter who will only want to go to concerts with Jordana, and she can only go to specific concerts if Jordana takes her, because I won't go to them and I won't let her go with anyone but Jordana. So certain things that you know, my girls feel more comfortable maybe talking to Jordana about. So yeah, she's embedded in the family. You know, we are family, but she's also embedded in my nuclear family. So very close with my husband and my children, and obviously my mom being her aunt and my father being her uncle. So and I have brothers, and you know, family dynamics are more than just me and her. She's a part of a much bigger family that she didn't have for many, many years, and now she does. So we enjoy those moments as well, where we're not just talking about the law, where we can actually enjoy each other's company and family. So.
And has there ever been jealousy career-wise? Or, for example, that she had a case that you wish you had,
Never.
or vice versa? Never.
Never. Never. And if that ever happens, then we've got problems. No.
Yeah.
It's the opposite, actually. We have people that come to see both of us for consults. We tell them to hire the other.
Yeah, it's funny.
We won't compete for cases at all. And if there's a case one of us has that the other wants to be on, we're co-accused. Like, we've done that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
like
there's certain cases that she should be doing that maybe that I shouldn't be doing, you know, and I'm happy to throw it her way, you know. I'm more than happy for it to go to her if I think that it's a case that should be going to her. There are things that she is stronger at than I am, and I'm content to send it her way. As long as it's still here and it's going to her, I'm very happy.
Yeah, no. And if there's a case that one of us has that the other wants to be on, then we're on it. We're coaching, like we're second sharing. You know, we've had that a number of times where I get a case in and he's like, oh, I want to do that with you. Okay, we're doing it together then. Yeah. You know, and it goes vice versa. Like, you know, she's had a couple of murders where I'm like, no, I want to be on that. So, okay. Yeah. You know, and so we'll do them together. Like there's zero competition, and that's, I think,
and
critical.
Jealousy, no, like absolutely not. You know, I'm so proud of all the progress and growth and work that she's done, and I'm so proud of the practice that she's developed. Like I'm the biggest cheering section and squad for her as she is for me. So not at all, not at all.
So it's really very nice, ladies. I want to thank you because that was a very, very nice and fun interview. And thank you for sharing your office or family dynamic with us, because I don't think a lot of people know that you actually are cousins. They know that you work together, but I don't know if a lot of people know that you're cousins. And so it's nice to get a glimpse of how it is for cousins to work. I wish I had a sister or a cousin who was in criminal law. Nobody wants to do anything criminal law in my family. So it's nice. It makes me want to have something like that. But anyways, it's nice to see. Good luck. And I really hope that you'll have many more years working together, and maybe you'll become partners, not just sharing office, but Leora, no.
No, we're good.
Maybe we'll become partners in something else. Like, I don't know,
like a side business or something.
Side business or something. Something different. Yeah. But not this. This works. Yeah. This works. Don't fix something that ain't broke. So yeah,
that's
perfect.
True.
Agreed.
Thank you
so much. Thank you for having us. This was a lot of fun.
It was. Thank you.